It was a quiet evening when a young girl sat in front of her phone, her eyes scanning the screen, but her mind was elsewhere. She had been through so much over the past few weeks, feeling like life was just a series of obstacles she couldn't overcome. The weight of everything was heavy, but today it felt unbearable. She had tried everything she could think of to ask for help, but nothing had worked. In desperation, she decided to send out an SOS message on social media, not sure who would see it or who might be willing to help. As she typed the message, she felt a strange mix of fear and hope. She had no idea how many people would see it, but at that moment it didn't matter. She just needed someone, anyone, to notice. She hit post and closed her eyes for a moment, bracing herself for whatever might happen next. What she didn't expect was for her message to reach people who would act on it immediately, people who were in a position to make a real difference. The message wasn't just any cry for help. It was raw, real, and filled with emotion. The girl had poured her heart into those words, sharing her struggle with the world, hoping someone would understand. She had no idea that her post would get the attention of two of the most well-known figures in the world. Two men who had built reputations not just for their work, but for their character. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and John Cena, both icons in the world of wrestling and beyond, came across her message. At first, it was just another notification in their feed, but as they read her post, something about it stopped them in their tracks. The Rock, known for his caring nature and strong sense of justice, could feel the sincerity in her words. He had seen his fair share of struggles both on and off the screen, and the pain in her post was something he could not ignore. Without a second thought, he shared the post on his own page, urging his followers to pay attention. John Cena, equally as committed to helping others, saw The Rock's post and immediately felt a sense of duty to act. He didn't hesitate for a moment. He knew they had to do something. Together, The Rock and John Cena began to talk, brainstorming how they could help. They were used to being in front of cameras, but this situation was different. It wasn't about fame or appearances. It was about someone in need, someone who had reached out in the most vulnerable way possible. The two men weren't just interested in showing support from afar. They wanted to take action. They wanted to reach out directly to make sure this young girl felt seen and heard. They knew that simply posting a message wasn't enough. Something had to change, and they were determined to be part of that change. As they discussed the next steps, they both knew the importance of moving quickly. The girl's post was still fresh, and they couldn't afford to waste time. They decided to send her a direct message offering help and support. They were aware that she might be skeptical, unsure whether or not to trust them. After all, she had no reason to expect help from two men she didn't know. No reason to believe that someone as famous as them would take an interest in her life. But The Rock and John Cena had always believed in using their platforms for good. They had always been committed to helping others, especially those who might feel invisible. They crafted a message, one that was sincere and compassionate, letting her know that they had seen her post and wanted to help. It wasn't just a message of sympathy. It was a promise to take action. They weren't just offering empty words. They were offering a real chance for something to change. They didn't know the full extent of her situation, but they were willing to listen. They knew that whatever she was going through, she didn't have to face it alone. They were ready to offer whatever support they could, whether it was financial, emotional, or practical. The most important thing was that they wanted to be there for her, to show her that there were people who cared, even if they had never met. As they hit send on the message, both men sat back and waited. The Rock was known for his quick action, but even he knew that some things took time. They both hoped that their message would reach her at a time when she needed it the most, that it would offer her a glimmer of hope in the darkness. The girl, sitting in her room, looked at the screen of her phone once again. She had seen many messages over the years, many promises that had never been followed through. But something about this one felt different. Maybe it was the sincerity in the words, or maybe it was just the sheer kindness of two strangers offering to help. Either way, she felt a sense of calm wash over her. She stared at the message for a moment before typing her response. She wasn't sure if she should believe it, but she had to try. She wrote back, explaining a little more about what had been going on in her life. The more she typed, the more she realized that for the first time in a long while, she wasn't alone. She felt heard, seen, and understood. The Rock and John Cena were still waiting, still hoping that their message would lead to something real. They didn't know what would come next, but they knew they had done the right thing by reaching out. The girl's response came soon after, and as she shared more of her story, the two men knew they were in this together. They had taken the first step. Now it was time to figure out what they could do next. Neither The Rock nor John Cena knew where this journey would lead, but they were committed to helping this young girl in whatever way they could. They had made a promise to her and they weren't about to break it. What began as a simple social media post had turned into something much more powerful, a connection that would change both their lives forever. After sending the message, The Rock and John Cena sat back, their minds racing with anticipation. They had done everything they could. Now it was time to wait and see what would happen. They both knew how important this moment was, not just for the girl but for themselves as well. It wasn't often they found themselves in a position where they could make such a direct impact on someone's life. They had to get it right. The Rock had spent years encouraging people to be resilient, to never give up, and to always fight for what was right. But this felt different. This wasn't a scripted match or a big Hollywood role. This was real life, and this girl needed help. There was no script to follow, no backup plan. They just had to trust their instincts. As The Rock looked down at his phone, waiting for a response, he found himself reflecting on his own journey. He knew what it was like to struggle, to feel like there was no way out. Growing up wasn't easy, and the obstacles he faced were sometimes overwhelming. But he had always managed to push through. Now, it felt like it was his turn to help someone else do the same. John Cena, too, thought about the people who had supported him along the way. He'd always believed in the power of kindness and that small gestures could create lasting change. He couldn't help but think of how many times he had been inspired by the kindness of others and how, in some small way, he had tried to pay that forward. Helping this girl was just one more opportunity to make a difference. As minutes ticked by, the anticipation was unbearable. Then, just when they were starting to wonder if they'd hear anything, a new notification appeared on their screens. It was a message from the girl. Both men immediately opened it, eager to see what she had to say. The response was thoughtful and heartfelt. She thanked them for reaching out and explained that, for the first time in a long time, she felt like someone understood what she was going through. She shared more details about her life, about the challenges she faced and the fear she had been living with for so long. She wasn't sure how much she could trust them, but she was willing to try. She was tired of feeling alone, and their message gave her a glimmer of hope. Reading her words, The Rock and John Cena exchanged a glance, both of them struck by the weight of the situation. They had known she was struggling, but hearing it in her own words made it all the more real. They couldn't ignore the pain that came through in her message. There was so much more to this than just offering a few words of encouragement. This was about taking action, about showing up in a way that would make a lasting difference. The Rock was the first to respond. He wrote back immediately, offering a few words of comfort and reassurance. He told her that she didn't have to face this on her own anymore. He let her know that they were committed to helping her in any way they could, whether it was offering guidance, connecting her with resources, or just being there for her when she needed someone to talk to. John Cena followed up with his own message, echoing The Rock's words but offering something more personal. He shared a bit about his own experiences with hardship, about the times when he had felt lost and alone. He told her that she wasn't weak for asking for help, that strength came from recognizing when you couldn't do it alone. His message was filled with empathy and understanding, and he made sure she knew that she was worthy of support. As the two men waited for her reply, they couldn't help but wonder what she was thinking. They had given her everything they could at that moment, words of support, a promise to help, and an open door for her to reach out whenever she needed. They both knew that the real work was just beginning, but they also understood that this first step was crucial. She needed to feel seen, heard, and supported, and they had done their part to ensure that she knew she wasn't alone. The girl sat in her room, staring at the screen of her phone. It was hard to believe that this was happening. For so long she had felt invisible, like no one cared about her struggles. But now, here were two of the most famous people in the world, offering their support. It felt surreal, almost like a dream. Her fingers hovered over the screen as she read and reread their messages. Could this really be happening? Could she trust them? It wasn't easy for her to open up, especially to strangers. She had been let down by people in the past, and the thought of being hurt again made her hesitate. but something about their words felt different. There was a sincerity in what they said that she couldn't ignore. After a few moments of uncertainty, she finally responded. She told them about her struggles in more detail, about the challenges she had been facing and the emotional toll it had taken on her. She admitted that she didn't have all the answers and wasn't sure where to turn next, but she was willing to take a chance. She thanked them for their kindness and let them know how much their support meant. The Rock and John Cena, reading her reply, felt a deep sense of relief. It wasn't just about offering help. It was about knowing that she felt comfortable enough to share her story with them. This was the beginning of something bigger, something real. They had made the connection, and now they could take the next step together. The two men immediately got to work, thinking about how they could best support her moving forward. They knew they couldn't solve everything for her, but they also knew that they could provide the resources and guidance she needed to take control of her situation. The first thing they did was reach out to their teams, connecting with people who could help in ways they couldn't. They also offered to personally speak with her and help her navigate through her challenges. They made it clear that their commitment wasn't just about offering help in a moment of crisis. They wanted to build a lasting relationship with her, one that would provide ongoing support. They wanted to be a source of strength for her as she moved forward in life. For the girl, the realization that she had a team of people in her corner was overwhelming. For the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of hope rising inside her. She didn't have all the answers, and she knew the road ahead would be difficult, but now, she knew she didn't have to walk it alone. The Rock and John Cena continued their conversation, discussing the best ways to move forward and how they could make a real impact. They weren't going to let her down. They had made a promise and they were going to keep it. The next steps were important, but for now, they were focused on ensuring that she knew she was supported and that her voice had been heard. This was just the beginning, but it felt like something meaningful was starting to unfold. The girl had reached out in a moment of crisis, and now, thanks to the kindness of two strangers, she had the opportunity to change the direction of her life. The Rock and John Cena knew that they were making a difference, one step at a time. Days passed after their initial contact, and both The Rock and John Cena remained in constant communication with the girl. They were determined to show her that they were more than just words on a screen. They were real, and they were going to be there for her. The connection they had made was starting to grow stronger, and with every message they could feel the walls the girl had built around herself begin to crack. She was slowly starting to trust them, and with that trust came a willingness to open up more. The girl had shared enough in her initial response for them to understand the severity of her situation, but they both knew there was more to the story. They couldn't fix everything overnight, but they were committed to doing whatever they could to make things better. They weren't going to leave her to figure it all out on her own. The Rock and John Cena had seen too much of life's struggles not to understand how important it was to have support in times of need. One evening, as The Rock sat at his desk looking at his phone, he noticed a new message from the girl. This time, her words were even more personal. She had been hesitant before, but now she seemed to be ready to share her truth. She wrote about her fears, her doubts, and the overwhelming sense of hopelessness she had felt for so long. Her life hadn't been easy, and the weight of it all had begun to take its toll. But in this message, there was something different. There was a glimmer of hope, something that hadn't been there before. The Rock's heart went out to her. He knew exactly what it felt like to be in a place of despair. He had been there, too. He had come from a place of struggle and failure, and he understood how important it was to have someone to lean on when everything felt like it was falling apart. He didn't hesitate for a moment. He replied right away, offering not just words of encouragement, but a promise that he would continue to be there for her. No matter what, John Cena too read the message with a sense of urgency. He knew that this moment was crucial, that what they said next could have a lasting impact. He carefully crafted his own response, telling her that it was okay to feel the way she felt. She wasn't weak for struggling. In fact, admitting she needed help was a sign of strength. He reminded her that she wasn't alone in this journey and that, together, they would find a way to move forward. After sending their messages, both men sat back, waiting for a reply. They knew the girl was going through a lot and they didn't want to rush her. They wanted her to feel ready, to know that she could open up at her own pace. They had already made it clear that they were there to support her, but they also understood that it would take time for her to heal and trust again. The girl, sitting alone in her room, read the messages from The Rock and John Cena with a mixture of emotions. She hadn't expected their words to carry such weight. For so long, she had been used to feeling like she didn't matter, like her struggles were invisible to the world. But now these two men, these icons, were telling her that she was important, that her feelings were valid, and that they were here to help. It was overwhelming. She stared at the messages, reading them over and over again. She didn't know if she was ready to take the next step, but something inside her told her that she had to. She couldn't continue to carry this burden alone. The messages from The Rock and John Cena had planted a seed of hope in her heart, and she knew it was time to let that seed grow. Finally, after a long pause, she typed out her response. She thanked them both for their kindness and shared more of her story. She talked about the difficult situations she had faced, the people who had let her down, and the fear that had held her back for so long. But as she wrote, she realized something. It wasn't just about the challenges she had faced. It was about her ability to rise above them, to take control of her future. She didn't know exactly how things would work out, but for the first time she had hope. The Rock and John Cena, reading her message, felt a sense of pride. They had seen her growth, her willingness to embrace the possibility of change. It wasn't going to be easy, but they both knew that she was strong enough to handle whatever came next. They were proud of her for opening up and for being brave enough to take the first step toward healing. Over the next few days, The Rock and John Cena kept in close contact with the girl. They weren't just offering words of encouragement. They were actively working to help her make real progress. The Rock used his platform to connect her with people who could offer professional support, whether it was therapy or community organizations that could provide resources. He knew that emotional healing was just as important as physical and financial support, and he made sure to connect her with those who could help her. John Cena, on the other hand, took a more hands-on approach. He spent time talking to her, offering advice and sharing his own experiences with perseverance. He made sure to check in with her regularly, reminding her that she wasn't alone in this. They had both promised her that they would help, and they were making good on that promise every single day. The girl, who had once felt lost and abandoned, was beginning to see a new path for herself. It wasn't perfect, and there were still days when she felt overwhelmed, but now she had hope. She had a team of people who cared about her, who wanted to see her succeed, and that made all the difference. One evening, as she sat on her bed, she took a deep breath and smiled. For the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of peace. She wasn't fully healed, and there was still work to be done. But she knew that she wasn't walking this journey alone. The Rock and John Cena had shown her what true support looked like, and it had made all the difference. They continued to stay in touch, offering their support and guidance, but more importantly, they gave her the confidence to believe in herself again. She wasn't just a victim of her circumstances. She was a person who deserved happiness, who deserved to thrive, and now, with the help of The Rock and John Cena, she was ready to start making that happen. It wasn't going to be easy, and there would still be challenges ahead, but she was no longer afraid of facing them. She had a team of people who had her back, and that made all the difference in the world. The journey wasn't over, but it had just begun. And for the first time in a long time, the future looked bright. The days turned into weeks, and the girl's life began to change in ways she never imagined. She had started to believe that things could improve, but she was also starting to see that change didn't happen overnight. The support from The Rock and John Cena had given her the strength to start confronting the things that had weighed her down for so long. But she knew there would be tough days ahead. Still, for the first time in a long while, she felt like she had a chance, something she had lost hope in. Every day was a new challenge, but now she had people in her corner who understood her pain and were ready to help her rise above it. The girl kept in touch with The Rock and John Cena, sharing her progress and the hurdles she was facing. They were always there, responding with messages of encouragement and wisdom. They didn't just give her advice, they made her feel heard, something that was more valuable than she had ever realized. The Rock was particularly invested in her well-being. He'd been there before. He knew what it was like to be at rock bottom and how it felt to fight your way up. Every time he sent her a message, he made sure it wasn't just about offering words of hope. It was about connecting on a deeper level. He shared parts of his own story with her, showing her that even the most successful people had faced the same struggles she was dealing with. It wasn't about pretending to be perfect. It was about being real, about showing vulnerability. John Cena, on the other hand, focused on encouraging her to find the strength within herself. He'd always believed that the key to overcoming challenges was in the mindset, believing that change was possible and that anyone could rise above their circumstances. He spent a lot of time talking with her about the importance of perspective. He reminded her that while the road might be long and difficult, it was worth it. And even on the darkest days, she should remember that she was never alone. One evening, as the girl sat at her desk reflecting on her progress, she felt a sense of calm she hadn't experienced in a long time. The world outside still felt overwhelming, but inside there was a growing sense of peace. It was hard to describe. She knew there was still so much to work through, but she also knew that she had begun to heal. She had spent so many years feeling like a victim of her circumstances, but now she was starting to see herself as a survivor, a fighter, a person worthy of success. She remembered the first time she had reached out to The Rock and John Cena. She had been so unsure, so afraid to open up to anyone. But now, looking back, it seemed like the right choice, maybe even the best one. The support they had given her wasn't just emotional. It had been practical too. The Rock had helped her connect with resources that could provide financial and emotional assistance, while John Cena had made sure she knew that strength came from within and that her past didn't define her future. As she sat there, the girl thought about how far she had come. She thought about the times she had felt hopeless, the days she had thought about giving up. And now here she was, no longer a prisoner to her circumstances, but someone who was ready to take control of her destiny. She had dreams, ambitions, and for the first time, she believed she could make them a reality. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past lift off her shoulders. It wasn't that everything was perfect now. Far from it. But she had changed. She had grown stronger, more resilient. And every day, with every step she took, she could feel herself moving closer to the person she wanted to be. That night, as she went to bed, she sent The Rock and John Cena a message to thank them. She knew she still had a long road ahead, but she wanted them to know how much their support had meant to her. They had done more than just offer help, they had given her hope. They had made her believe that there was more to life than the struggles she had been facing. When The Rock read her message, he felt a sense of pride. He had been through so much himself, and he knew how important it was to have someone believe in you. And that was exactly what he and John Cena had done. They had believed in her. They hadn't seen her as just a girl asking for help. They had seen her potential. They had seen a fighter, someone who could overcome the odds. John Cena, too, felt proud of the progress she had made. It wasn't easy to change your mindset, to break free from the chains of self-doubt and fear, but she had done it. He knew that there would still be difficult days ahead, but he also knew that she now had the tools to navigate them. She was no longer the person who had been unsure of herself. She was becoming someone who could face anything that came her way. Over the next few weeks, the girl continued her journey. She had started to reach out for help in other areas of her life. She wasn't afraid to ask for assistance anymore, and she no longer saw herself as weak for doing so. She had learned that asking for help wasn't a sign of failure. It was a sign of strength. It meant you had the courage to acknowledge that you couldn't do it alone, and that was something she had never realized before. The Rock and John Cena continued to check in with her regularly. They were no longer just mentors, they had become friends. They had walked with her through the darkest parts of her journey, and now they were there to help her celebrate the victories no matter how small they seemed. Every step forward was a win, and they made sure she knew that. One day, as she walked out of her house and into the world, she felt different. It wasn't that the world had changed, it was that she had changed. She saw things through a new lens. The challenges she faced no longer felt insurmountable. She was ready to face them head-on, with the support of her friends and the strength she had found within herself. The Rock and John Cena had shown her that there was no shame in asking for help, no shame in showing vulnerability. They had taught her that strength wasn't just about power. It was about resilience, compassion, and the willingness to keep moving forward no matter what life threw at you. As she looked ahead, the girl saw a future that was filled with possibilities. She had the support she needed, and most importantly, she had the belief that she could achieve whatever she set her mind to. She wasn't defined by her past anymore. She was defined by the choices she made now, the steps she was taking to create the future she wanted. The journey was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, she felt ready for whatever came next. She had been given a gift, the gift of hope, of strength, and of the belief that she was capable of achieving her dreams. And now she was going to take that gift and make the most of it one step at a time. The months continued to pass, and the girl's transformation became even more apparent. She had gone from someone who felt lost and hopeless to a person who was standing tall, ready to take on the challenges that life threw her way. The support from The Rock and John Cena had been instrumental in her journey, but now she had something even more valuable: self-belief. She had learned to trust herself, to understand that her past didn't define her future, and to realize that she had the strength to continue forward, no matter what came her way. She had made progress in so many areas of her life. She had started to pursue her passions again, things that had once seemed too far out of reach. Her creativity, her ambition, they were all coming to the forefront. She began volunteering with local organizations, something that had always been a dream of hers but had felt impossible before. She had discovered that helping others was one of the most rewarding experiences she could imagine, and through that, she also started to heal even more. It was like giving a part of herself to others helped her own healing process. Every day felt like a new opportunity for growth. She had learned that healing wasn't linear, and that some days would still be harder than others. But the difference now was that she didn't give up. She had built resilience, and even when things got tough, she knew how to find her footing again. The encouragement she received from The Rock and John Cena still echoed in her heart, but it had become a part of her own internal strength. They had planted a seed of hope, and now that hope was growing on its own. As she sat in her room one evening reflecting on how far she had come, she felt a deep sense of gratitude. She had come from a place where she felt invisible, like nothing she did mattered. But now she was living a life filled with purpose, and she knew she had the power to make a difference, not just in her own life, but in the lives of others. She had come to understand that her story wasn't just about her. It was about how she could use her experiences to help others who might be going through similar struggles. The Rock and John Cena had continued to check in with her, but she was no longer just the girl who had reached out for help. She had become someone who was sharing her own wisdom, her own strength, and her own lessons with others. She had found her voice, and now she was using it to inspire those around her. She was no longer just a receiver of support. She was giving it back, paying it forward in ways that were meaningful to her. One day, as she was meeting with a group of young people at a local community center, she shared her story. She told them about the dark days, the moments when she felt like there was no way out. But she also told them about the light she had found, about the people who had reached out to help her, and about how she had learned to never give up on herself. The group listened intently, some of them with tears in their eyes, others with a spark of hope in theirs. As she finished speaking, one of the young people came up to her. The girl, around the same age as she had been when she reached out for help, had tears streaming down her face. "You saved my life," she said softly. "I didn't think anyone could understand, but you do. You've shown me that it's possible to keep going." The girl's words hit her hard, and for a moment she was speechless. She had never imagined that her story could have such an impact on someone else. She hugged the young girl tightly, feeling a sense of connection that was deeper than anything she had ever felt before. In that moment, she realized just how far she had come, not just in her own healing, but in helping others to heal as well. The cycle of support, love, and encouragement was continuing, and it was something she would carry with her for the rest of her life. After that day, she continued to do more community work, dedicating herself to helping those who were struggling. Her relationship with The Rock and John Cena continued as well, but it had evolved. They were no longer just mentors. They were her friends, her partners in this journey of growth and healing. They continued to offer advice, but they also celebrated her victories, no matter how small they seemed. They were proud of the woman she had become, and she was proud of herself. As time passed, she started to notice something incredible. The more she helped others, the more she healed. Giving back had become a powerful tool in her own recovery. She had once believed that she could never be enough for anyone, that she would always be the person in need. But now she was the one offering a hand to others, guiding them through their own struggles and showing them that they were not alone. The Rock and John Cena. Watching her from afar couldn't help but feel proud. They had known from the very beginning that this was what they wanted for her, to see her thrive, to see her find her own strength, and to see her pass on the lessons she had learned to others. They knew that their involvement in her life had made a difference, but they also knew that the real credit went to her. She had done the work and she had emerged stronger than ever before. One day, The Rock sent her a message. It was simple but meaningful. "You did it. You are a living example of strength and resilience. I'm proud of you." She read the message, a smile spreading across her face. The words meant the world to her. They were a reminder of how far she had come and how much further she could go. The journey had been long and it had been hard, but it had also been worth it. She had found her purpose, her strength, and her voice. She had become someone who was not just surviving but thriving, and she had learned that with the right support, the right mindset, and the right people by your side, anything was possible. As she stood outside on a beautiful morning, looking up at the sky, she knew that the journey was far from over. There would still be challenges, but she was ready for them. She had faced her darkest moments and had emerged stronger. And now, with the love and support of those around her, she was ready to take on whatever came next, knowing that no matter what, she would always have the strength to keep going. The story of the girl who had once felt invisible had become a story of triumph. It wasn't just her story anymore. It was a story of hope, of community, and of the power of never giving up. And as she looked to the future, she knew that the best chapters were yet to come.